cradle to the grave. You don't have to be no slave. You need a loan you want to save. Welcome and visitors today. Hey, with a commitment to quality. What? Therefore you and me was one big family, but now it's a community. True. Making life easy. Yes. Like ABC. Don't matter who you are, you can benefit. When you bring your mortgage
with rates as low as 5% and loans for all your needs.
Open an MRA.
Save for your golden years and take advantage of our savings products.
We will finance your business.
Checking accounts, small business loans, wire transfers, and so much more.
NCCU all the way. Wow!
Your community.
Caribe Hard Cider. Moments made extraordinary.
Hello. Good evening. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome. It's so good to be back here with you guys. Welcome. Come on down, folks. The bell has rung. Those of you on Facebook, those of you on LinkedIn, good evening to you. Those of you on YouTube, thank you so very much for joining us. I feel like I have lipstick in my teeth. I feel like I have no. I'm out. Okay, I'm good. It's a new season of exclusive interviews. I know y'all miss the exclusive interviews. A few folks actually reach out to me and say, Jill, when are you doing exclusive interviews again? We're back with exclusive interviews. And I am so excited to start off this season of exclusive interviews with a bang guest. I am heading all the way to St. Lucia for our very, very, very first show. And I want you guys to share the live. This is going to be a very interesting conversation. And I'll give you guys a little bit of background in just a little bit. But I'm excited to be back with you guys. I know a lot of you are excited to have the show back and excited to, see me again online. I know we've been doing a few infomercials over the last couple of weeks. But we're getting back into the swing of exclusive interviews. And then closer to the end of the year, we'll bring back the Run the Track and Talk. We're trying to do it in strides, so we pace ourselves into the end of the new year. I want to say special good evening to my sponsors who have entrusted me, and decided to come on board. Listen, those sponsors were on board like hotcakes before the last season ended. And I just want to shove them out in a massive way and say thank you so very much for the support, because bills got to get paid, yo. Right? Bills got to get paid. So big up to the National Cooperative Credit Union of Dominica, who've been there with me, and I'm back again. I want to shout out the entire marketing department at the NCCU, but every single person who's a member of the NCCU, I want to also shout you out, because you make the National Cooperative Credit Union the actual institution that it is. Of course, you can get your security savings, your MRA retirement account, young savers deposit account. I think I was probably like 10 when I had a credit union account, right? It's a must-have. I know sometimes we say, boy, times are hard, bagay red, how am I going to save? Even if it's $5 you put away, put something away for a rainy, because trust me, them days going to be more and more rainy, all right? So big up to the National Cooperative Credit Union for their kind sponsorship. Also want to say thank you very much to Millennium Freight, the agents for Aeropost.com. Hi, Verlin. How are you? I see you. They're also the agents for, so that's Millennium Freight. They're also the agents for Logistics International, UPS, and ECU Worldwide. So essentially, it's moving the world to you either by land, sea, or air. They also provide you with customs brokerage and of course professional moving. And they're located in the heart of Rosa. You can miss them in the nature island of Dominica. And also want to shout out the national. No, I said that already. NCCU. We got Caribe, the Dominica National Lottery. Blast specifically, that's Blast Gaming. 13 locations island wide. And Blast has a new game coming up, guys. If you play at any of the Blast locations, they have a new game coming up that will allow players to win even more. So go ahead, follow the Dominica National Lottery on Facebook for more information. Share the live, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see you guys coming in, coming on down. Thank you very much for joining me. Let me just check down my volume a little bit. I want to get you guys, tell you guys a little bit. Thanks, Shara. Shara, I'm like, it's like mix up colors going on. Yeah. We trust in the process on this one. We trust in girlfriend's gonna go back blonde, but we trust in the process on this one for now. So, my guest today, you might be saying, well, how Jael have a Lucian as the first guest on her show? Well, we know last week, those of you who follow me, last week we celebrated in Dominica Kalinago Week, and the very first female chief, that is Annette Sanford, was supposed to be our guest last week for the premiere of Exclusive Interviews. Due to unforeseen events, and literally it was unforeseen events and circumstances completely beyond our control, she was unable to be on the show, and we've since have had to reschedule. So don't worry, Annette's gonna come in at some point. I know you guys are looking forward to. Thanks, Deborah. I know you guys are looking forward to Annette coming on. And I was looking forward to speaking with her and sharing with her. But I am so excited to have Karlyn Percil on with me. So yes, she's a Lucian, but I feel like she's part of my extended family because I've known Karlyn since, well, let's just say, I'm not gonna give all you my age, for over 20 years. Karlyn and I met in an elevator years ago. I think we were both either on our way to a American or coming from something, and we ran into each other. And she was talking to me about makeup, just making small talk, two black girls in an elevator, and find out she's from St. Lucia. We started speaking Creole, we exchanged numbers, and we remained very good friends in my early 20s, moving on to 25, thereabout. And then obviously we went separate ways. I moved to Dominica. She's since done so many amazing things. Karlyn appears on TV here in Canada on a regular basis. She's also done work with with St. Lucia hosting the Jazz Festival. She has had an extensive career. We've stayed in touch, not like probably we want to stay in touch, but life be lifing, like y'all know, right? Life be lifing. And I know we've grown separately. A lot of the things that we do probably align with each other, but we've just not had the opportunity to reconnect like this. And I'm so excited to have her as my very, very first guest for this season, because we're gonna have a little powwow. We're gonna talk. Like, listen, when she came on tonight, it was like, oh my god, I haven't seen you in like forever. That was how it was, right? Because we've not seen each other. We've spoken on WhatsApp. We never lost touch up with each other, but it was just really nice to reconnect with somebody that you've known for so many years, but not just reconnecting, to see how you've grown. Your careers have blossomed in very different ways. When I knew Karlyn, she worked in banking. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that. We're gonna talk about all of the changes that have happened in her life, and even life growing up in St. Lucia, which is very similar to our life growing up in Dublin. But we're gonna still have a look at power, right? And I'm so excited to be bringing her on this show here with us. Are you guys excited? Thanks, Deborah. Thank you very much. Share the live, share the live, share the live. Every single person who's come on, make sure you share the live. I want to say good evening to the folks who are joining me on YouTube. YouTube has been growing significantly. So thank you very much. Those of you who've tuned in on YouTube, I truly appreciate you and thank you for your support. I also want to say thank you very much to the folks on LinkedIn and the Facebookers. You know, I got you. Share the live. And I'm going to, without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time. I want to welcome to the show for the very first time my guest for the start of the season. A special good evening to Karlyn Percil.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello,
Welcome.
everyone. Hi.
How are you? Bossa.
Como é? Tudo bem, bien?
Tubabe, mo like I got it.
Como é que é? Like a chebe. Piam.
Nachebe.
Chebe for.
Welcome to the show, Karlyn.
Thank you, my love. It's such an honor to be here and also to be on, for this season. And I too can't wait to hear from the chief, and I'm really excited for her interview to be aired as well.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hello.
Karlyn, before I brought you on, I was explaining to people like how long we've known each other. Like we met when you were very new to Canada when we met.
Yes.
And you were, in the financial sector and you were doing your thing, you were modeling. I rapidly became your makeup artist.
Yes, I remember that. And that's what was so great about meeting another. And I'm pretty sure for a lot of folks who are like tuning in, like, sometimes when you see another island girl and you're hoping that you'll be friends, because I have done oh, hey, you're from where? Small Island too? And you have this excitement and you're hoping that something will work out. And then to find out that not only are you from Dominico, so patois, so that means we can do all the things. And then you're a makeup artist. Like it was such a pleasure meeting you. And that's what I love about our bond. Like you said, as much as we haven't spoken for so long, we still kept in touch. And when we reconnect, it's like we spoke yesterday, even though we haven't spoken in like such a long time.
Yes, it's so nice to have you on the show. I know you grew up in St. Lucia, and we want to touch a little bit about life in St. Lucia, because just like me, you very much stayed very connected to your St. Lucian roots and background. I think a lot of people think when people move to a different country, and it happens a lot when people move to a different country and they throw a big stone. They're like, we're not coming back. We're not coming back to these hard times. We finishing that. Right? This was not, just like you and I, this was not our experience. We've always stayed very closely connected and tied to our community, visiting as often as we possibly can. I know if you could be in St. Lucia right now, you probably would be. And
Absolutely.
and you've done so many things in St. Lucia. Can you share with us a little bit about your childhood growing up in St. Lucia? What was that like?
Oh, absolutely. St. Lucia is home. And I think that's what I recognize in you, the kindred spirit for the love of your culture, the love of the earth and the land that birthed you. And you know how we say, like, St. Lucians or even just small island people, we're just a different type of people. Like and I'm not saying, and I don't want none of the Jamaicans or Trinidadians to come for me, right? Y'all not great too. I'm just saying, let small island people have their moment, okay? Growing up in St. Lucia, very similar again to you. I grew up in the bush, so I'm a bush girl. Grew up with no electricity, no running water. My parents my dad, even though at 82, he's still a caretaker of the land. We grew up on a farm. So for me, St. Lucia holds, I just think about how lucky I am to be born into such a beautiful, luscious, rich, culturally rich history and country and the people. Let's talk about the people. St. Lucia has some of the most beautiful, kind, amazing people. And for me, the privilege of growing up in the bush for the first 17 years of my life is something I think that I'll always carry with me. And I moved to Canada when I was 25. Moving to Canada was, to me, it wasn't an opportunity for me to get rid of my roots. To me, it was an opportunity for me to celebrate my roots. And moving to a new country as an immigrant, I think you celebrate your roots even more, because moving to a new country, there are so many experiences that make you question who you are, question your roots, question your accent, question
Oh
your
my God. I
accent.
remember you used to have all of those. You used to be like, my accent. Oh my God, they're not gonna like my accent. I remember
Yes.
all of those
And they
insecurities.
didn't, and I got bullied for it, and I got, I got all the things that so many people on this call probably have been through. and
Mhm.
and for me, the more, what gave me strength, what gave me power, what gave me the reminder that I come from a really beautiful country and history, was my multicultural, multilinguistic culture from St. Lucia. Puisque
Mhm.
nous parlons patois, like even the way the Creole language came about. When you
Mhm.
think about our ancestors, the enslavement and the attempt from colonization to not just colonize our bodies, but our language or how we speak, we're so defiant. We created our own language
I
and
know. Like
culture around that,
it's so amazing,
right?
because it's a language of resistance. Like it was created for so that the white man thought in that moment that we were trying to sound like him. We're trying to
Damn.
speak their language, but it was just really and truly holding on to the African language and inserting little language that they would think that, oh,
They wouldn't know
yeah, they said
exactly.
nigga, you play pale konu.
You believe- Mais yo pas ça j'aime parler con nous. Yo pas ça j'aime faire ça. And what was really great about this, I think, being in Canada, it re it allowed me to see my culture from a different point of view. Sometimes when you're in it, you take things for granted. Like
Mhm.
growing up in the Caribbean, again, like, yes, I am that island girl who doesn't know how to swim. I have learned. I'm way better now.
You don't know how to swim.
But I fit the stereotype. I'm not ashamed to admit it, because I know there are so many adults like me who don't know how to swim. It's okay. I can do a little something now. I've gotten better. But it moving here, it also forced me to, that's when I discovered I was Black. Like how in the Caribbean we celebrate the multiplicity of our cultural identity. Up
Mhm.
here is like, now I was in a box and I was like DI and I'm Black, and because I'm Black and I'm a Black woman, there are all those stereotypes people were so eager to put on me, and I was like, wait, hold up, no, I actually know who I am.
Mhm.
And I don't need your imposed identity of Blackness to define me. I've been
I
defined.
love that you say that, because for a huge part of my time in Canada, and one of the reasons why I ran back to the islands was the fact that I felt like I was this entitled little Black girl walking around, and I didn't understand microaggressions, and I didn't understand, because I just looked at it as, oh, that white person having a bad day. Like you knew my time as a cosmetic manager, and I had moments, and we probably even discussed it, where
Mhm.
people would come up to me and they would say, oh no, is there somebody else that could test me my makeup? Is there someone? And I'm like, what? I don't know how to test your makeup. I'm a Monica Kana. Like, those things you thought about,
Yeah,
but you didn't realize in that moment that this was actually
a
like
microaggression.
a
Yeah.
microaggression,
Mhm.
towards you as a woman of color, because you grow up around Black leaders and Black people, and even if there are light-skinned versions of it and all of that, and you had your little colorism in the midst of that, it still wasn't a black and white thing.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
you all, everybody was just a different hue,
Yes, exactly.
and that is so, it's so important that you share that, because even in my own difficulties, currently, like not even like the past, because you will say, oh, that's a thing of the past. Like it's a current
It's a
state and
curse.
current situation, where you've constantly been placed in the Black woman box. And I was watching something the other day, and they were saying, Black women are like the lowest, on
On the totem pole, like when it comes
on
to disrespect, when it comes to
Mhm.
aggressions from, somehow Black women always end up in the middle of
At the bottom.
people using us as the example for not whatever enough, good enough, strong enough. And we're just like, can y'all leave us alone? Can you let
But
my
Caribbean women are, because of our experiences, though, I also feel like we're not able to even understand people with that entire Black lived experience in North America. It's harder for us to understand that. And even like sometimes I'm just like, well, that's none of my experience. Like, because we feel like
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
grown up into yourself and you have an appreciation and love for your features, and for, like, I remember my mom would always used to tell me I'm so beautiful, and I
Yeah.
always felt so beautiful, and nobody could ever tell me anything else. Whereas there are Black people in North America who have been told from the time they were small that
Yes.
you got some caca, or
Yes.
they've been told
They're
something,
not beautiful, they're
you're not
ugly, and
beautiful.
yeah, yeah, and it shows up. What I would also say is that in the Caribbean, the way colorism and colonization as a cultural behavior shows up, it's baked into our culture, so sometimes we don't always see it. The harm is there, but
Mhm.
it has become a lived experience for us, right? And for example, even when, the whole thing with the hair, right? How many times
I wrote an
I've gotten my
entire
hair in the
paper on it.
Caribbean. It's like, chive apa, chive apa, try but no. If your hair is
Sheneg.
down off your head, and your hair is beautiful, period, right?
Mhm,
But a
mhm.
lot of our people in the Caribbean, um, they like use those things as a little bit of a, almost like a little bit of a term of endearment sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's rooted in colonization. Even the whole thing of girls should be seen and not heard, that was the policing of our
Oh, I got
bodies and
that.
policing our tone, right? So I
Mhm.
would say that it showed up differently, and especially for in Canada, or if you're in the US, or even in the UK, there's lots of similarities, but it might be expressed differently. And what I've learned and I've realized is that, yes, the ignorance is there, and the ignorance will always be there, but not but and for me, I think it's important for us to talk about the examples, because for some people who are going through that, where they don't have another Black person or person of color to speak to, or maybe another person where they're like, that's not my experience. Fair enough, but it doesn't mean it's not that person's reality, right? And it's
Yeah.
so important for us not to deny or gaslight each other, because just because it's
Mhm.
not my experience, it doesn't mean that you didn't experience that. And I think that's where I would like to see a shift happen. We can bring the awareness up so people are aware, hey, I'm not alone. You're not crazy if you think you actually are going through something. And thirdly, even if my experience is not yours, I see you. There is psychological pain, and I want to hold space for you because you don't deserve it.
Colin, there's another layer to that, though. The layer
Tell
of,
me.
island pride, and
Yes.
growing up in a society where don't tell people your business, don't not people business. Like, even when you're going through stuff, whether it is mental, you have depression, or even just you wondering about, how people see you in society, feeling like an imposter, all of these things. As a Caribbean woman, it's so much more difficult for you to speak about it as a regular Black woman would probably feel, like, I can just speak about it, because these things are enshrined in our systems, where, hey, "Ça pas affaire moun." Keep
Yeah.
your business, your home business, to yourself. Like, I remember, being told, "Oh, people are not supposed to know when you're in your period." Like, that's not people business. Like, I'm in pain, but nobody is supposed to know. Like, how do
You
you?
must suffer in silence.
Yes.
And these are some of the cultural norms that we inherited that didn't necessarily serve us, right? Like, for
Mhm,
example, my mom growing up, I think you've probably heard that too, right? Head down, work hard, right? And the world will reward you. I
mhm,
moved to Canada and I'm like working hard, head down, people going for coffee.
mm-mm.
I'm like, no, I gotta work, right? And then you realize that, oh,
You
this
too
is not
quick.
going to work here, because actually it works against you. So I think part of what I love about the everyday, I call it an everyday cultural revolution, because for any woman, Caribbean woman, Black woman, how, especially folks, trans, gay folks, lesbian, people have been at the margins.
Mhm,
For you to show up fully as authentically as that feels for you, to me, that it's in itself is a cultural revolution. Because
mhm.
the more we can show examples of who we are in terms of our full humanity, not just the imposed identity of what it means to be a woman, a man, a child, a daughter, blah, 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 blah. But in today's cultural age, if you show up fully as you are, oh, I do want to tell some people my business, but I will use the discernment to know who deserves to hear my business, because not everybody does. That thing of not telling your people your business and put your head down, work hard, don't ask for help, is actually harming us now more than ever, right? Because so many of us are struggling in silence and we don't need to. So many of us have the answers for something somebody else has been going through, right? Because mental pain, that mental distress, mental anxiety, it turns into physical pain.
It does. It manifests
It
itself.
manifests itself into, and if we're not paying attention, guess what happens next? Where do we see it? Our hair starts falling out, our skin,
And
we got fibroids, we can't eat, we can't sleep, and the list goes on. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our medical practices, even for workplaces, our employee wellness programs, it doesn't take into consideration the psychological impact of the colonized systems of colonization, systems of racism, the caste systems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like sometimes, like, and that's why I love your podcast and how you give so much room for us to talk about the many multiple experiences of being a Caribbean woman or girl or child, like even for people like us, like, and that's why I actually, just because of you, I first visited Dominica. I've always wanted to go to Dominica, but I just did it. I was just like, I don't know anybody there. I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, girl, just come. And we have a ferry from St. Lucia to Dominica. And this was probably one of the most amazing. When was it? Was it recently we were saying, girl, I got to come back?
Yes.
It's been so long, but my trip to Dominica made me feel, and I think that's why, even though, I'm happy our friendship worked out, but even when I meet other Dominicans, and that's also part of my blind spot, because every time I see a Caribbean, I'm like, hey girl, we right? Because I think that there's the solidarity between all women. No. We learned no. But what I'll say is that, like, even the fact that you give not just Dominicans but Caribbean nationals room for us to share the multiplicity of our experiences. Because even for me, even when I tell people I grew up in the bush, the first 17 years of my life, I was shitting in a pit toilet. I did my homework by candlelight, kerosene lamp, right? Like all of those things. And people are quick to be like, oh, you don't look like somebody who grew up in the bush. And I'm like,
what does that look like though?
What does that mean? What does that look like? And that's one thing I love
But they
about
instantly see it as poverty, and it's not necessarily. And it's not necessarily poverty.
And I'm like, do you know how rich we were?
Girl, I grew
organic.
I never grew up in a pit with a pit toilet, but my great grand had a pit toilet, and I looked forward to using that pit toilet when I went to her house, because for me it was like an experience. I'm like, we're going to use a pit toilet, and I remember years later, the pit toilet, they eventually, closed it off, and a cherry tree grew out of the pit toilet, and the biggest reddest cherry tree you ever did see, and I'm like, God, stop. So I said, cherry can't come and you can't eat do.
Oh my goodness. Like, these are, and to me, these are the stories that, man, like, we're so rich in the Caribbean. I get it. There's lots of systemic things that we still need to fix. We still need our leaders to step it up, right? So they can really center the people. There's still so much we need to do for women, for youth, and all the things. And I think that's what gives us the fuel or the passion for us to keep going, because, and I always say that, especially with my siblings, because most of my siblings are still back home in the islands. And, I'll be calling my brother or my sister or, my brother-in-law, and they'll be sending me a picture. They're on the beach having a piton or having a bacon and saltfish, right? Yeah, things might be tough, but they are literally in heaven. You know what I mean? And they have the benefit of having access to this. And then to me, that is what makes our Caribbean here. If somebody asked me to choose again where and how I would like to be born, I'm like, I'll choose St. Lucia over and over and over.
And probably the same way.
And the same way. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was a fantastic, very long intro. Oh my God.
No, oh my gosh.
Let me tell you, listen, we are going to keep you guys very busy tonight. Hi, Glenda. People are on. Shara, Glenda, Kamal, big up to you guys. We're coming on. Verlene, Deborah, Thank you very much, guys, for coming on. They're slowly coming in and they're commenting, and Glenda's laughing. I don't know what she probably laughing about the cherries. Um, but people are definitely cracking up. And we're gonna go all over the place because this show doesn't really take a specific structure. We're essentially, getting to know a little bit about Karlyn, and we spoke a little bit about your upbringing, and even like intertwining that with what we felt or what we've experienced here in Canada, being in a space, sharing a space with other people from multiple ethnicities, and just having such similar experiences, even at different times. You came up to Canada, and you came up, I feel like you were at the peak of your career, because I remember you landed, you were at such a great position. You were working for Scotiabank. I can never forget that. You were on Bay Street, and you had if I remember, I think your job had to do with international and foreign something.
Yeah, international. Oh, you got good memory.
Right.
Yeah. When I left St. Lucia, I was in charge. I was in charge of the group who opened up a new branch in Rodney Bay. Rodney Bay, if anybody been to St. Lucia, Rodney Bay is kind of like a touristy area. And I opened up a new branch, and at the time they were doing paperless banking. And it was my team. I was responsible for doing like the training and integrating the new system and all of that. And I remember when we got the documents from head office, I was just like, like, it just wasn't in alignment with our culture locally in terms of how people banked and even the questions they had for us. So I rewrote the entire training manual. I redesigned everything. And I remember when the people from head office came down, they were like so impressed. And it's also that whole bias, and we'll talk about that'll be for part 2. But the whole bias of, one of my pet peeves is companies sending expats down to the islands like they don't have the talent locally. The talent is there. You just need to give more locals opportunities. And when I moved to Toronto to head office, I continued working at the bank, and that was in international banking. But again, sadly, I still had to fight for my skills in the Caribbean to be recognized. Even though I opened up a new branch, my resume was stacking. But I still had to fight, including going through very unpleasant experiences. Of how did she get the job? Like, who did she have to sleep with? And Like, again, going back to when you see other women from the Caribbean, you have this, let's connect, let's collaborate for the betterment of our community. But then we have to deal with a lot of the distrust, and a lot of that distrust coming from the times of colonization and enslavement. A lot of people don't understand that this distrust between women, between us as Caribbean nationals, whether you identify as Black, Brown, Kalina, whatever it is, we were taught to distrust each other. That's not our narrative to carry forward. It's our narrative to disrupt and to choose a new one, so that we can keep on supporting.
So that happens in the Caribbean. That happens outside of the Caribbean.
Everywhere.
You get, because I know, being the personality that I am, I would get into spaces and I would recognize other Caribbean women, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, I want a new friend, especially if they're from the smaller islands.
Right.
It's just like an instant connection, like we did have, and we stayed very close for years. Like, we would go away, we went on trips together, and it was not just you and I. We had a little group and stuff,
Yes.
who would travel and all of these things. And I never got a sense of jealousy or, any of those things. Because I think we both came into our friendship with the same mindset that, this was like your sister from another island.
Island.
This is another island. And just the other day, girl, without tripping you, I ran into somebody, and you're gonna know who I'm talking about. You remember the time when the car caught fire on the highway with us in it? Girl, I can't believe you don't remember that. Girl, I ran into the person when I won for the Caribbean International
Yes.
Festival.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. And he was there, and he was like, I know your face. I'm like, you do? And I didn't. I'm like, you remember me? Where do you remember me from? He's like, your face is just so familiar. So I said to him, the one time in my life I almost died was in your vehicle.
I don't remember who that is
We were
though.
coming from First Fridays.
Okay. All right. We'll have to talk about that one offline.
We'll talk about it offline. But I remember when that happened, the thing, you and I were in the back seat, and I think I was sleeping on you and you were sleeping on me. And we just heard, oh my God, we got to get out of the car. And we got jumped out of the car and had to take a taxi the rest.
Whoa.
But I could never forget that. And so I was speaking to that person just the other day, and just saying, hey, this is where you remember me from. And he's like, oh my God, like, where have you been? Like, I haven't seen you in so many years and stuff. So we obviously, a lot has happened for you, Karlyn, because you decided literally to take a stand and quit your job. Bag I fall. Only you decided to leave your cushy, because we could say it's a cushy position.
Oh, yes.
But it wasn't exactly cushy because was probably bringing in the money, but there was a lot of other things that were attached to it.
Yes.
So share with us a little bit about why you decided that you were going to leave your job, and what were you going to pursue next.
Whew. That was a like they say, fall moment. And it's, I would say, like everything like we've talked about, like it's a multiple things that got me. And I always say that entrepreneurship chose me, I didn't choose it. Right. Like I told you, like, so when the head office came to St. Lucia to open up the new branch, I realized that I was also very hungry for more. Because even same thing in St. Lucia, it's like, well, you personal banking officer, I was responsible for the branch on Saturdays. It was cushy. But one thing I've learned about myself is that I'm hungry for more knowledge, for more, I get bored easily. And in international banking, as much as I was supporting, what I loved about that role too, I was supporting the Caribbean, Latin America, and Central America. I didn't speak Spanish, but a lot of my colleagues, they were multilingual. And they were also struggling for a lot of the things that I was struggling with. Like, when I worked, for example, with the folks from Jamaica, and would have folks coming from Jamaica, Argentina, Spain. I really love my time at Scotia because I met so many interesting individuals. But they were all struggling with the same thing. I remember my colleague telling me like, oh man, I want to get rid of my Spanish accent because I feel like it's getting in the way of me, growing. And people were like, man, I've applied for so many roles, I never got it. But then I'm listening to my white colleague be like, oh, I went to coffee with Bob, and yeah, he has a new role and he just hired me for it. And just all those different, and I'm like, wait, we're not crazy. We are having a different experience. Like, and as I navigated, I used to call the employee assistant line because we had a lot of like coaches available, wellness programs, but they still didn't fully understand the immigrant experience or the Black woman or the Caribbean or anybody who have a multi-ethnic or multilinguistic cultural experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found myself, like I always do, what did I do when they brought those training manuals that weren't very applicable? I created my own. So I noticed that I'm a creative at heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I also started creating solutions for the gaps that I was noticing. I was like, oh, this person doesn't even understand the immigrant experience. So to me as a leader, it means that your leadership skills, it's at a lower level than you're projecting. Mm-hmm. So I had to self-coach myself. Like I had to navigate the systems and what's happening over there? What's the professional translation for this? Right? Because as you know, at that time, I couldn't even say white supremacy. I couldn't even say colonization. I could even say anti-Blackness, which really is what my company teaches now, right? So when I look at a lot of what I went through, I feel like in some way my experience, the experiences a lot of the people, my Jamaican Trini friends, my friends from Spain and so forth, as I created solutions for myself and my team were also sharing it with other people. And then I started getting emails while I was still working at the bank with folks being like, so did you send the quote of the month out yet with my toolkit? And I'm like, what? That's just for my team. But people were like, can you add me? I don't know.
Because we want
And I realized that I had something people loved. Then it went to lunch and learns. I took my lunch hour. We used to talk about what it's your mindset, understanding your emotions. When you have been through a racial macroaggression, what do you do with that emotional energy? Because your spirit has been disturbed. Where does that stress and anxiety go if we don't have a place for us to be taken care of?
How you even recognize it? How do you even recognize? Like,
Thank
how do you? It took. I said it took me forever to
How do you
recognize
even
it,
recognize it?
right? And even when you do, like, how do you deal with it when you recognize it? Because I remember like just wanting the ground to open and just swallow me up because I
Oh,
was
yeah.
just like, that's what this is, right? That's what this is. Like, why me? Like there's nothing I'm not smelling, like you start questioning, like,
Yeah, you question yourself and you question who you are. And
Mhm,
again, when you're on that hamster wheel of questioning who you are, what you do is that you invite more anxiety in and more uncertainty, right?
mhm.
And again, my leaders, they did their best. But what I realized was that corporate does not necessarily put qualified leaders to lead teams, right? Sometimes systemic privilege benefit people who happen to identify as white, or people who might have connections, right? Even for myself in my year-end review, I was told that I need to tone it down because I'm too passionate, right?
Like how like
Why? Because I asked questions, and I was like, wait, how? Why are you grading me lower when I was the one who did the work, but you're grading my white colleague higher who didn't really do the work, right?
right?
You so it's and again, those problems still exist today. But honestly, one of the things that I'll never forget, my grandfather always said, if you can't change something, you change the way you think about it, right? So pasa changer lido, right? What do I have control over? And you know that very small exercise, like your locus of control, and it's something I always get all my coaching clients to do. You draw this circle, right? And then you draw another circle inside of it. And I want you to write all the things you control within that circle. And anything outside of that circle is outside of your control. So that means it's not like it's none of your business. You need to take an informed lens to it, but you cannot beat yourself up around it or on it, right?
Mhm.
So then I just started putting together all my toolkits. And there were a couple of other things that happened. I had a very senior VP. That time my team expanded. The acting role that I was doing for a while as senior manager, running our conference, running all our training for the entire Caribbean and Central America, all those things. They hired a white man to come in to be director. And then, and he was trying to tell me, oh, you should still keep on doing it. Look good on your resume.
You were doing all his work.
And not
Wow.
getting paid for it.
I'm not getting paid for
But
it.
again, they're like, oh, Carla, we love you. You're great. Da 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 da.
And they know how to like pet you.
Pet you.
And they just like I called it like petting. Like they treat you like a
Oh
freaking
yeah,
dog or a cat. It's like
yeah.
you're constantly being told, you're doing such an awesome job, and you think to yourself, or I should say, you should not think to yourself that they're doing that because they absolutely want you to grow. They're doing that because
They
you
want you to
you
stay
they want you to stay and do their work for
and do
them.
their work. Yeah, and there's a whole thing. And anybody who's interested, look up the pet to threat, right? Because the second you also start believing in yourself and you like stand for yourself, they don't like that either, right? So it's all of, long story short, all of those things, a bunch of other things led to me, when that last disrespect, sometimes when that last disrespect happens, you're like,
Yeah, the last straw.
that last straw. and
Mhm.
and and you also, you have to be honest with yourself and take responsibility for your purpose and for your
Mhm.
life. And for me, that was me taking responsibility. I told myself, yes, I've been in this industry for 20 years, but it's also time to go. I believed my self-determination was stronger than my comfort zone, right?
Wow. Wow.
And
Self-determination needs to be stronger than your,
comfort zone,
yes, than your
right?
comfort zone.
And your
Mhm.
comfort zone, that's where you grow. That's where you receive your blessings. And you don't get your blessings when you stay within your comfort zone, because growth happens outside of your comfort zone. So yes, I was afraid, but I write that resignation letter, and after a couple of months, I handed it in, and I had a conversation with someone else that had met on Bay Street, and I had started doing training on the side as well for different organizations. And there was this one particular, tell the story, Claudette McGowan, how she changed my life, and she's always believed in my work. And that's the other thing. Don't just stay within your company and hope people know what you do well. You have to learn how to not only create your brag list, but share it. You'll feel uncomfortable,
Whoa.
but that's okay. Again, self determination needs to be greater than your comfort zone. So you have to think of yourself as your own cheerleader, your own coach, your own mentor, you have to be able to do that for yourself in order for you to put yourself in a position for others to do it for you. Because you don't want people to amplify your limitation. You want people to amplify, right? What you're great at, right?
Wow.
Because if
Wow.
I stay where I am and I ask you to amplify me, you're literally helping me to stay stuck where I am.
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm participating in my own limitation, right?
Wow.
So it's important to change the narrative. So I believed in Karlyn enough, even though, and again, believing in yourself does not mean that fear isn't there. And I want everybody to remember that fear is a very natural human emotion. If you are feeling fear, you're feeling a little bit of anxiety, you're feeling a little bit of confusion, all of those things, it's a part of your growth mindset working. You have a healthy working brain. And honestly, that's why I got interested in emotional intelligence. Because growing up in the Caribbean, what do? We sweep our feelings what under the rug.
I know, and that is,
Which
and
is
that is something that, like, even when, I saw you updated your everything, when your everything
nice.
started updating, I was like emotional intelligence, like I suddenly became, because oftentimes we deal, even in a Caribbean space, in relationships, like partner relationships, in relationships with people at work, and
Yeah.
you see, and then you can say like, I've identified, I'm like, that person has no emotional intelligence. Like,
There we
you're like,
go.
you're wondering, like, and some people might be wondering, like, what the hell is emotional intelligence? Why is it even necessary to have emotional intelligence? Because we are taught to be academically intelligent, right? We're not even given social skills to be able to, like, in the Caribbean, we're not taught how to be social beings. These are things that you either an introvert or you're an extrovert, period. Per in North America, they teach you a little bit more about
A
how
little
to
bit more, but
interact,
not as much though, right? Because
right?
social emotional learning is still not taught in schools. And I think it needs to be taught in schools overall. So what is emotional intelligence? At the core of effective communication and relationship building is EQ. If I had
Mhm.
to break down emotional intelligence for you, emotional intelligence is self-awareness. How well do you know yourself? And how well are you able to manage yourself in communication, in relationships, whether that relationship is with in your workplace, within your family, or within a friendship, or very, like a stranger situation. How many times have you seen people struggle to explain themselves or who they are? How many times have you seen people get triggered? Like maybe somebody said something or you smell something. And I'll preface this with saying by the brain receives information from all five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch.
Mhm.
Like you can smell something and it can send you something that you weren't even aware of where you're going, but you feel the emotional charge. Like, "Oh, wow, jo pa mem sa pou- ki sa ki fe man waje ou pa mem sav?"
Mhm.
Passive, right? Because we think over 70 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Majority of our thoughts are repetitive. That's why learning takes such an effort, because you have to take your brain from the fixed mindset of what it knows and you're bringing it over to what you don't know, because you're building, you're growing, right? So for EQ to be effective, it means you need to know yourself enough to know when, oh, you know what Jael said there? Oh, actually, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. What is this? Am I angry? Did you remind me of something? If you have a high EQ, I'll be able to come and say, you know what, girl, I don't know. I don't know if it's something you said. I'm not even sure, but I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Is it okay? Can we talk about it?
Mhm.
Can we have a
But then you
conversation?
stay vexed with people and you don't even know why the person vexed with you. They don't even know why they don't even know anymore why they vex with you. And it's because of a lack of emotional
Emotional intelligence. Yeah. So we all have the ability to build that skill set, but if you're not actively working on it in terms of putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, it means that you're constantly fighting for your limitation. That's why we got grown people 50, 60, 70, and people are like, Miss, yeah, you that person haven't changed. That person is still stuck into their emotionally immature
Mhm.
self, right?
Mhm.
Because they don't have the skills to not even understand the cultural context of a situation to even have a conversation about it. So what we do, we take all of our feelings, we put it in a knapsack or we put it under the rug. But we know that when we sweep things under the rug, it turns moldy.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you're going to get some asthma or something because that dust is going to be choking you.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you don't even know what you're covering. And you don't even really know who you are, what you want, because you've been just layering instead of actually processing and having a conversation with yourself so that you can now have a more effective conversation with others. And the last thing I'll say on that topic is also when people always say, how do you improve your relationship? How do you
Mm-hmm.
become a better wife, mother, daughter? How do you improve your relationship? I know a lot of people will not like to hear this, but the number one and most effective way to improve your relationship with that person you love, your date, your crush, whatever it is to improve your relationship with yourself.
Wow. Wow.
Everything starts with you.
Folks are commenting on the live, and I'm going to get to the comments in just a little bit. Um, I'm interested to know about what was it like to share your story with Oprah Winfrey, and how did that experience, impact you?
Oh my gosh, that experience itself.
First of all, how the hell you get to talk to Oprah?
I like and it's back to my curiosity and my hunger for knowledge, because when I realized that emotions have play, like at the end of every experience, what we create is an emotion, whether you're conscious of it or not, right? That's why they say words are magic or words are power. So choose the day that you'd like to have by choosing your emotion. I was so fascinated by how do I break that intergenerational sweep things under the rug, because there are so many things I've gone through my trauma as a child that I needed to talk about, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the capacity. Like I would think about it and I would shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I would try to have a conversation. I would start crying.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for me, I was like, man, how do I get there? So I started reading. I'm a reader. Again, I grew up in the bush. What are you gonna do in the bush? We got no TV, no phone, no.
Right?
So
Mm-hmm.
books became my best friend. They still are. So I started reading about what is vulnerability. I learned that vulnerability, the ability for us to share what's on our heart when we've been harmed, when we've been hurt. Vulnerability also feels like you're naked and you feel like, oh, people will just come and, like lash you or juke at you or take advantage of you. It's a very normal human reaction. But we cannot get to love without vulnerability. We cannot get to trust without vulnerability. What we selectively numb, we also automatically block the joy, we block the love, and we block the courage. So when I discovered the work and I started reading a lot of research around vulnerability, I discovered Brené Brown. At the time, her work was very accessible. It made sense to me. I'm like, oh, so shame is a human emotion. I don't have to get rid of shame, because shame is that feeling that tells us you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? Peter.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to hear what you're saying. So shame is that little voice that fuels your inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
So your inner critic will always have that tip going, no matter what. Because again, you're outside of your comfort zone. So when I discovered the work of Brené Brown, her research talked about something called shame resilience. And we cultivate shame resilience. So how do you shut out that little inner critic that's telling you you're not good enough? You do that by cultivating shame resilience. And how do you cultivate shame resilience? You do that by sharing your vulnerability story. You do that by putting empathy on that thing that you're so ashamed about, or you think like, oh, I'm that age, I should have reached a certain level in my job, I should have a certain type of house or drive a certain car. All those external pressures we put on ourselves that society has induced on us,
Mm-hmm.
all of those narratives.
Oh, I just remember our conversations. Like you're saying that, and I remember you saying, "I want to be married by," and I want to have this by, and
all,
it's just replaying in my head now.
all of those narratives, it
Mm-hmm.
actually can harm us or it can help us. That's why it's important for you to, your self-talk is so important, and not letting anybody speak into your life is so important. So the work of vulnerability, Brené Brown, when I learned that, oh, so I need to open up, which was very hard for me. And that's how Sister Talk started. So somebody from Harpo Studios called me because I've written a blog about vulnerability, about fear, about shame, and all of that emotions, how hard it was, and so forth. And at the time, they were doing market research to bring Brené Brown on Oprah's Life Class. And they're like, "Oh, what do you think about Brittany?" I'm like, I have a women's group. We study her research and her work. They're called Sister Talk. And because at the time they wanted to invite me to come on Oprah's live class, and I'm like, nah, you can't just bring me. You gotta bring me and my girls. Yeah, the sisterhood. Yeah, sisterhood along. And that's how we got an invite. So I told him about the women's group. I called a few of the women. I said, Harpo Studio. And I had to ask him, I was like, Harpo? He's like, Harpo. I'm like, Harpo's an Oprah Winfrey? He's like, yes. I'm like, Oprah Winfrey has an Oprah Winfrey Network? He's like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, oh, how did you get my number? So they invited us. We got connected with the producer, and that's how we ended up filming like 3 shows on Oprah's live class. And also at the time, they were doing some shows in Canada on OWN TV. Somebody gave my name again. It ended up being on here. And it was honestly, and that's why I say entrepreneurship chose me, because I realized that the things I was interested in for my own personal life, that's also why I also studied how does the brain work? Because yes, I understood how emotions work. Emotion is a bodily sensation. That's why it's important for us to get connected. Self-awareness. Where do you feel your fear or your anxiety? Is it here? Is it here? Do you, right? All of that is EQ 101. Because if you can identify where your emotions get stuck, again, if you think about your locus of control, what's within your power, this body is within your power. You can move it, you can shift it, you can shake it off. Well, of course, I does say that's why dancing is such a huge part of our culture. Whining, twerking, get the emotion moving so that we can reconnect to our true, authentic self, so that we can show up more fully in the world. And I was like,
Wow.
but yes.
Wow. How has embracing what you call beautiful warrior identity change your approach to life and even to leadership?
To be honest, the women, the sister talk community really inspired me to make that, because at the time, one of my elephant stories, being a survivor of child sexual abuse, I didn't really connect to the survivor, narrative. I'm like, a survivor. I'm like, I'm not just surviving. Like, not only does society shame me for going through what I went through as a child, they blame me. You don't get support. People think, going back to what you said, oh, don't tell people your business. Tell people your business. How about we talk about those kind of things so we can better protect the children and women and young boys and other vulnerable people in the Caribbean? We can't keep sweeping things like that under the rug. And I remember, in addition to being an Oprah's live class and studying the brain and all of this, I needed a community of women to also help me to navigate, right? And to keep going. And Survivor just didn't cut it. I'm like, I didn't just survive. I'm out here fighting for my life. I'm out here fighting for Karlyn, not just for love. I didn't care about a partner or anything like that. For me, it was more around, can I look myself in the mirror and reclaim the love for myself? Can I love? Because I was very ashamed of Karlyn before. Because when you carry the shame from a childhood trauma, you think there's something wrong with you fundamentally, right? So for me, reclaiming that love narrative was so important. And I think that's what fueled a lot of my work, studying emotions, studying the brain. Self-love, what is that as a practice? And learning that the foundation of self-love is self-friendship, it shifted everything. So for me, I was like, oh, a beautiful warrior is someone who fights for, and to me, beautiful does not just mean beautiful from an aesthetic perspective, but you're fighting for a beautiful life, meaning that you feel peace, you feel safe, you feel empowered enough to go after the things that you dream about and the things that you want to pursue in your life. And I'll never forget. So I started using it, and then people started calling themselves Beautiful Warrior. I remember when I used to send out my newsletters, I'll get a newsletter from someone to be like, "Hi, Karlyn, this is Beautiful Warrior,
So and so.
so and so." Like this, I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
hey!" And it just became a thing. And for me, for women, and for everyone who identify as a woman, we are forced into a patriarchal world, and we are forced to define ourselves by the definitions of how patriarchy defined women, right? What's a woman, or what constitutes to be a woman, right? And then you add the colonization, and then you add the narratives around how women are seen as less than and all of that. And you end up with a very deficit definition of what it means to be a woman. So for me, every woman out there who are defining for themselves who they are, to me, is one of the most liberating things we can do for empowering women and girls, not just in the Caribbean, but overall. And beautiful warrior carries that fighting spirit. Whether your fighting spirit is go lay
Mhm.
down, whether that fighting spirit is it's okay, the dishes are still in the sink. Paddy, yeah, don't say nothing, save your voice. Because sometimes some of us are the nurturers, we're the fixers, we're the ones everybody go to in the family to get everything done. But who do you go to take care of yourself? Who
Hmm.
do you go to get that pat on the back? Who do you go to when life becomes a bit heavy? Who do you go to when you need someone to encourage you? These are the beautiful warriors I champion, I love, I admire, and I will always keep on speaking about them until I die.
Wow, we have people on the live who've been commenting. People like Kimmy. Kimmy says, um, I think she was referring to something that you said earlier on, and she said it cripples us and keeps us in a box. We have to be equipped. We have to reprogram our brain.
Yes.
Valda added on. So when does the role of the home come in? I am a confident person. Wait, I the confident person that I am because of my parents, especially my dad. You know,
Mhm.
like she speaks about that. Kimi adds again, self love is key. We have to be transparent. A lot of folks are just interacting and they're just, commenting a little bit because though you're talking about your life, you're still like, you're constantly teaching, you're constantly adding things that would pertain to not just you, but pertains to how other people can view themselves, how other
Mhm.
people may see themselves, or even how they think society views them. So you're constantly adding these. You've gone a step further though, and you've created the EDPM Equity Institute. And if you could share with us a little bit about the purpose of it's your name, the acronym institute. What was the purpose behind it, and why did you feel it was important to do that? And I also want to talk a little bit about your success system that you have
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on and stuff. We want to talk a little bit about that, and if you can marry the two with their,
The two together. Yeah, I'll actually even do so. My company is KDPM Consultant Group Inc.
Mhm.
And it's Karlyn is my full name. And under that, we have three brands. So we have the KDPM Equity Institute. The Equity Institute provides bite-sized micro learning, inclusive leadership. We do anti-oppression training. We train a lot of C-suite leaders and people managers around psychological safety as a skill set, which at the core of that is emotional intelligence. So I do a lot of teaching around how does the brain work, especially in a leadership setting where you're managing a lot of conflicting priorities and you don't necessarily have time to sit in multiple trainings. So a lot of the work that we do is to create tactical and practical leadership tips around inclusion for leaders, like what is a microaggression. Like now I'm educating leaders on that so they don't do that to staff, though again we know there's so much harm happening. So that's why KDPM Equity Institute, which is also home to Leap to Equity, our C-suite leadership training and team training. We also have the Success System, which is a set of journals and tools for self-determination. Again, I took the neuroscience behind how does the brain work. So even all the things I've shared, five senses, the brain is activated by those five senses. Think of it as the language for the brain. So which means you can change your reality by tapping into any one of those senses. So if you want to really deepen a vision or your purpose statement for your life, lighten the candle and while you're writing it out or saying it out loud, all of those things really helps and aid. So we have the success planner. We have like stone paper journal and notebooks,
Mhm.
rooted in the elements of life and creation. And even our stone paper notebook, on each page, there is an affirmation or an encouragement. Like on this page, it says, breakthroughs are coming, embrace them. We have our better habits journal. Like, how do you set rituals and what's your morning routine? Going back to people who have a low emotional intelligence and they want to build and grow in that because you can. In the Better Habits Journal, for example, we have like an EQ tracker and an energy tracker so that you can notice like what really, again, I vex, but I don't know why I vex. But at least now you can track it and you can actually see, wait, I was really feeling empowered today. I was on my game. I was aligned. What was that? Like what are the things that led me to that process? So that's the success system. And we have Sister Talk group. Actually, just this weekend, just gone, we hosted our day retreat. Very good friends of ours, Karl Percil, who's an artist, chef. He used to own Harlem, downtown Toronto, and Anna, certified forest therapy guide, yoga teacher, really awesome woman as well. We've all partnered to host day retreats and overnight retreats for women. So the Sister Talk community, actually this year, next, the intention is to spend more time in person, in public. We actually have a certification program. So people who want to get certified in EQ, ancestral leadership, looking at how the brain works, the science of mindfulness. Like, why do we judge ourselves and each other so much? All of this will be in a certification program. And we have a huge campaign that we'll be launching soon to certify women from the Caribbean and also women from Canada as well. If they want to lead their own circles, they want to lead their own girls or women's group locally, will
Mhm.
the structure, all the knowledge and the systems are built with Sister Talk. I want to now pass that on to other women so that they can effectively lead their circles wherever they are, or the teams.
It's funny you say that because it's very like it's very difficult to have a group of a sisterhood in the Caribbean. You don't find sisterhoods in the Caribbean. You find women's groups, and even in the women's group, there's infighting. You find
That's such
um,
a great distinction. You find women's group, you don't find sister.
right. So there's a lot of infighting. You may find book clubs, but they're very like, okay, let's get to the point and let's move on. You find all of these, and I think like a huge struggle for me straddling both countries is coming from Dominica, going to Canada, having a group of close, because most of my friends here have been my friends forever, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it does not necessarily. I mean, I have friends in Dominica that I grew up with, but I would not necessarily say they're part of my sisterhood, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And going back and realizing, like, even the other day I was talking to a very good friend of mine, and she with her intent is to return back home,
Mhm.
where her home is, and she was saying, oh my god, my greatest fear is not having that sisterhood, you know.
Mm.
When I
Yeah.
go back, it's like I feel like if I had to have tap back into my friendships from when I went to school, it's almost like I'm digressing. Not saying that they are in a worse situation.
No, it's
The
just
level,
different cultures,
right, right.
mindsets, and all
Yes,
of that.
yes.
Yeah,
And that's what she was sharing with me. And I was like, oh
true.
my, like
Yeah,
like
it's
what you're
true.
saying is so truthful. But it also gets to a point where you have friend groups, and there's a lot of infighting and gossiping and amongst the friend groups, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
and and it's how does one keep themselves out of this, because I know people are on here. I mean, shoot, I'm interested in having my own sister
Just to
group,
talk.
my
Yeah.
own, because I have a very close group of friends, and we did a couple things, here and there in Dominica, and they're like, we should do this every month, and I'm like, this
Yeah.
could be a thing, because we started
Yes.
doing it 767 Girls on the
By
Rock.
the way, that yeah, I remember, and that's how Sister Talk started. Like,
Yeah.
folks came to my house for one night, and they were like, I was like, okay, yes, come over, let's talk, because I was also tired of networking with I'm a VP, I'm a director, I'm the CEO of this. I'm like,
Mhm.
what does that mean?
I know.
Title doesn't tell me anything about you. I want to have heart conversations. I
Mhm.
want to. There's so much healing wisdom in sisterhood, and there's so much power. Like all the dreams I have right now, including, and I know we're almost at time, but the biggest thing the Equity Institute is getting ready to launch right now is Kofa AI. It's the
Mhm.
first AI powered mentorship and coaching platform. So everything that I've just talked about, like let's say you're like, oh my gosh, Karlyn, I love this. How do I now tap into my EQ? Give me a plan for a week. You can actually take Kofa AI, which has, think of it, you're getting Karlyn,
Mhm.
but better
Mhm.
because you're getting more of the research from the
Magnified, Colin magnified.
Karlyn magnified, right? And also you can access her at any time of the day. So
Mhm.
us bringing sis, I'm really excited for 2025 and 20, the rest of this year, bringing Kofa AI and bringing Sister Talk to the Caribbean. We have hosted a few things in Sister Talk. Shout out to Louis Victor has been, Ocean's Brandon has been an incredible partner. I've met some incredible women. Eve actually was one of the first women who she was looking for community at the time. When I say anybody in St. Lucia, something, and that's how it started. I was like, who in St. Lucia wants to meet up? I was like, same. I was like, I don't know if anybody want to meet up. They might not, but I put it out there, and some women showed up, and I'm still close friends. You know, Louise, Kathleen, who runs Helen's Daughters. When I go down, we make sure we meet up, and sometimes it's not always a large group based on capacity. I think right before COVID, we did a larger group on Pigeon Island. We brought about, I think, 20 women together. We set our goals. We sat by the beach, on the ground. Like, it was amazing. So what I'll say is that, and that's why I'm releasing a new book called The Healing Wisdom of Sisterhood and the 12 Principles of Practicing Sisterhood. Because I think you made a very important distinction there. And we need a whole other conversation on this one. Women's groups does not automatically translate to sisterhood unless you're willing to put in the work.
Yep.
It's possible.
It's possible.
I'll come. We'll host the first one in Dominica together.
Yes, let's do this. I mean, we wanted to do something since when I started 767 Goes Rock. But again, I found so much, and this is again coming from a place where, and I don't like to say coming because I feel like, yeah, I became an adult in Canada, but I also learned so many things about working collaboratively with people.
Yes.
And going back to Dominica and wanting to work collaboratively with others and always feeling like somebody's waiting for them to just stab you in the back. And even when you tell them, I want to work with you, I'm not interested in stealing your brand or let's identify my strengths and your strengths and let's bring it together. I've had like countless encounters where, you know, there are groups who, you know, I've said, hey, let's work together. I have a brand. My brand is established. I know what my strengths are. Yeah, I could probably do what you do, but I can do this better.
So let's do.
Right. So let's come together and then you get all of these like animosity and then it makes you feel like I don't want to do anything. And you just drop everything all together and you're just like, you know what, I'll just stay in my hole and it's very discouraging.
But I know, and that's true, and that's a reality. And I've also gotten stabbed by people I've worked with. I always say, don't let people with low EQ deter you from your purpose expression. All right. Sometimes we encounter those people because God, the universe, whatever language you use, wants to teach us discernment. Right? You can't practice discernment if you're always having a conversation just with yourself. That's like saying, I want to be a great communicator, but I'm only talking to myself. Right? Like, if you want to practice love, the universe will send you the most difficult person for you to practice with. It's not going to send you a loving, kind, person. No, it will send you the person that will really challenge and test you. So I would say, like, still put it out there. Let those, and when you get those people who are like, oh no, blah, blah, blah. Oh no. Where is the fire?
Is that you?
It might be upstairs. Yeah.
Fire. And Karlyn has not moved.
That's fine. It's okay. So when that happens, I think it's an opportunity for God or the universe to tell you, this is not a good partner for you, or that person is not in purpose alignment with your purpose path. Right? So and that's what a high EQ teaches you. It teaches you bounce back faster. It's not like you don't feel pain.
Oh, I always bounce back. You know, one of the things that I think we've always had, and we both of us have, we're okay letting go of things, and we're okay moving on. And then sometimes I do certain things, and I'm always like, and I know there are people on here who are probably share the same sentiments as we do, but you do something and you want to continue, and then you're like, oh, I can always just tweak this like this, and it'll be a completely different thing. And I'm all about that, like I'm all about, hey, I could do it differently. And but oftentimes you're always, I feel like we say a lot of times, oh, I don't need friends. I don't need that. I don't believe in that.
Anybody who say I don't need friends or I don't trust women, it's a cry for help.
It is a cry for help.
And it's so sad because like I said, all the dreams I've had so far, even right now, launching Kofa AI. By the way, if you're in St. Lucia, you're interested in AI, there's the Global South Summit launching in St. Lucia, end of October 29th to the 31st. And it's all about how do we leverage AI to accelerate not just our business, our goals, but also our country and our culture.
Wow.
Really, really, really great conference. I'll be speaking at that. And as I'm getting ready for this, like I cannot dream big without my sisterhood and my sister talk community. I am dreaming big. Like even the day retreat we offer for Sister Talk, I can do this because I'm collaborating with Anna and Carl. The core of my work is collaboration, right? I cannot do this without collaboration. So for anybody who's out there, if you have been thinking small, like if you're doing your dream by yourself, you're thinking too small, number one. Number two, if you have been thinking about reaching out with someone, but you're afraid, acknowledge the fear, write a letter to it, have a conversation with it, and make that call, that email, send it. Because we're at a point in society right now where we need your big dreams. We need your cultural innovation. We need your ideas. We need collaboration because we are also tired. I don't want to do everything. I don't want to do what you're doing.
That's true.
My lane.
Yeah, I always like telling people, oh, because this lady was shocked. She's like, she was like surprised. She's like, oh, Jael, you can do. I didn't realize you could do everything. I say, yeah, I could do everything, but I don't want to do everything. There's only one thing that I really
hyphenates, and there are tons of multi hyphenates out there, right? Because we
can want to do everything. I will oversee it. I'm okay overseeing it, but I don't want to do it. Yes, I can do video editing, and yes, I can do podcasting, and yes, I can MC, and yes, but I don't want to do everything. I want, like, even the other day, somebody was saying to me, they were expressing their views on, on a group of MCs, and they were, just discussing, and I was like, they're like, oh, why don't they ask you to do it? And I'm like, they don't have to ask me. They can just ask me to train them. Like, I'm okay training them. Yeah. Like, and people think that I want to be in things. Like, a lot of times people think that you want to be in things because you're good at what you're good at. And like, I can't help it that the Most High, like, you can't help it, right? Yeah. But I've learned to know that one of the things is that you don't want to burn yourself out. No. So oftentimes you have to just take a seat back and say, hey, I'm okay with teaching somebody and somebody taking the run, So
that's what I'm telling you, we need a part two, because here's what people don't understand about purpose. One of my favorite master classes, and by the way, if you become a free member at KDPM Equity Institute, we have tons of podcasts, classes on EQ.
I'll put your website, in there for folks, because it's not in the subject line, so I'll put that on there so folks.
So here's what I'm going to say about purpose alignment. So from an African indigenous technology perspective, purpose is something that is assigned to us when we were born. Purpose is actually tied to our elements, whether it's fire, water, earth, mineral, nature. Purpose is actually in service to. So when you think about your purpose is service to community, and there are different communities. So you just gave such a beautiful example of that. Yes, you can, as an MC, you can be in service to an audience or an institute or company who hires you so you can go and do MC. But another version of your purpose expression that you get joy from is mentorship.
And honestly, people don't know. I don't want to do everything.
Right? And that's why I also created my certification program, because I'm like, I need more people to understand EQ and how the brain works. Because there's some basic, how Marcus Garvey said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. Right? That's an inside job. And the quality of your life, the quality of your communication, the quality of your relationships is hugely dependent on the quality of your relationship with yourself, your self-awareness, your level of your EQ, and that also drives how you express your purpose. So you see how you were like, oh no, but I can also mentor you, right? Like, we need more leaders.
We don't have to get rid of them, because
more leaders operating at that level, Jael. And to me, that is why I'm really excited about spending more time and doing more work in the Caribbean as well, because it's we have such rich, brilliant people in the Caribbean, but I feel like we are culturally deficit if we don't collaborate. Like, we're not leveraging.
We're also very limited in
very limited, exactly.
We want and we are our own resources, and
Absolutely.
we don't realize that. And I'm like,
Yes.
oftentimes I'm looking at and I'm saying simple things that you could do, for community, for stuff like, I mean, even like something like raising my kids. I believe in like raising my kids in a certain place, in a certain environment, and all of these different things. And people often wonder, like, why? And I'm like, I mean, my children can walk nippy, in Dominica. They can't walk nippy in Canada. Like they're and just being in touch with the earth and being, centered and being raised in a community that where there's community, because that it takes a village. You don't have that in Canada. I don't have that, that village,
So much harder to build a
right?
village. Yeah.
So it's like it becomes very difficult when you're navigating that in the islands, and knowing that there's so much we can do, but we've limited ourselves just to what we think we have. So we always look at another man's land as the land of opportunities, and not.
Here's and here's a challenge I want to give out to everyone, because I also, every time I go back home, I always make sure I work with local creatives and so forth. I want to challenge everyone who's watching, whether you're watching the replay or you're live, find someone within your community for you to partner with on your next project, or maybe something that you're working on right now. Send
Mhm,
it to someone, ask them to amplify it, or
mhm.
vice versa, right? Or email them and say, you know what, I see you doing this. My audience would love this, or I know some people who might love this. Let's get to practice together, because we can talk about all the things we've been talking about. If we don't put it into practice,
Until we blue in the face, if we don't put it to practice. It's
nothing changes.
facts. Very, very, very true.
Like nothing changes. So that's why I
Um,
believe
Alda has a
when,
question.
when I see people like you, right, and look at what we were 20 years ago and look at now. Like we both have grown so much. So even when I think about some of the things we can partner on, it's
Mhm.
still the same thing. We still want to partner on girls. I'm still working with women and girls, but now I'm working with them at a whole different
Love.
level. You know
Mhm,
what I mean? So now we can partner at a whole different level
mhm.
because of that. So I want to see more Caribbean women working together, partnering together, doing things together. Because I think, and people as well, not just women, but because my work focuses a lot on women, because I want to leave a better narrative behind for my nieces who are looking up to me. I want to leave a better narrative behind for young girls. I want them to know that anything is possible. I mean, look, I grew up in the bush with no computer, no electricity, and I'm about to launch Kofa AI. I'm part of a
Mhm.
Black Founders Accelerator up here. I'm working with technology. So, how you start is never going to be how you finish. How you start is just a small slice of what's possible, and that you can leverage that so that you can dream bigger into your purpose.
Yeah, Valda wants to know, what education level does someone need to have to qualify to do your certification? And she was also
Oh,
asked earlier. She was asking about your. I believe she asked somewhere about your credentials. She's like, please share your guest credentials. So they want to know, what is Karlyn Percil. I guess she probably missed
oh,
the
what I
intro.
do.
Yes, yes.
So the question of what credentials do you need? Again, going back to not just looking at someone's value from the Eurocentric point of view. Do you have a PhD? You have this, you have that. You have purposes. If you're here, you have a brain, you have value, you have value and something to add. So as long as you have some interests and you have some work facilitating or working with women, that's enough. For me, I actually dropped out of university. I dropped out of Rice, and I was doing my business degree part time, working at the bank, and then I bought my first property. I couldn't afford to do both, and I didn't want to take a loan for school
I
because I
remember
really wasn't
that.
sure. You remember? I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go into business administration. And at the time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to become a VP of the bank, especially with everything I was navigating. So
Mhm.
I took a more entrepreneurial path. And by that I mean I took accreditations based on my role. So I was a project manager. I was a business requirement. So I took certifications in those fields. I was a certified PMP, and I was a certified business analyst and business requirement. And I studied, EQ and neuroscience. And I have a certification in psychological safety. I also did some training on positive neuroplasticity with Dr. Rick Henson. Like I followed my interest and not society's definition for, oh, well, you need a BA in something, because it didn't really serve me. It didn't serve my purpose. So I
Mhm.
learned to listen to myself. I learned to listen to where I was being guided to. And I'm really excited for what's next, because even for, I'll give an example, when I created the program around psych safety and ancestral leadership, I wasn't sure if people would buy in, right? But people are interested, and now I'm teaching it. And actually, a university, there's a professor that I follow and I love, they recently reached out. So fingers crossed, I might be actually presenting ancestral leadership and emotional intelligence at a university pretty soon here in Toronto.
Wow, fantastic, fantastic. Let me see if there are any other questions.
Yes.
For you, Valerie's saying great response, educational requirement. She loves the response. Gregory added, I trust everyone until they give me a reason why I should not trust them. I guess he's talking when we were.
Oh, talking about the trust. And here's what, can I offer something in addition to that? I agree, trust everyone until, but don't wait for them to show you. Because
Yeah.
the brain has this predictive modeling perception, meaning that if you go out into the world looking for something, you will get it. So, for example, if you go into the world looking for someone to break your trust, they will. And also, trust is never broken, because trust is in you. You carry it with you everywhere you go. Another human being might break down that trust based on how they respond, or they didn't keep their promise, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
that is on them. You have to take a look
mhm,
at, oh, well, okay, Karlyn, you trusted person X. What was the part in your process that allowed you to trust them fully? And now that they've shown you otherwise, what will you do differently as you move forward?
mm.
Right? So again, using that EQ lens, so you're also not baking yourself into a narrative that doesn't support your full self-determination. Self-talk is extremely important.
My final question, because I know we've been here, and I don't like to do these for too long because I want to keep everybody,
Yes.
attention. Although people do love, I mean, sometimes we've gone to 2 hours for this show,
Oh
trust
my
and believe.
gosh. Welcome
Um,
back.
yeah, but you can always come back for another, and we could probably delve into more like subject material rather than speaking about your life. But I love the way that you were able to integrate your life into what you do professionally, and that brings me to this question. In terms of how can professionals really cultivate resilience in their personal and professional lives?
How can they cultivate resilience? That's I'll say two things. There are some people who do not want to cultivate resilience, because especially as Black people, we're tired of being resilient, right? Some
I
people
know. I know. Listen,
are
like
resilient, right? So
hurricane
that's one.
time, we resilient. This we not toujours resilient.
Tired of being resilient. That's one. But what I'll say too, because resiliency is about bouncing back, right?
Mhm,
I would say focus on understanding what psychological safety feels for you first. Meaning that, what do I need to feel mentally and emotionally safe in any situation? So that looks at what communication boundaries, like how people talk to me,
mhm,
what they say, how they say it.
mhm,
Also looking at what am I willing to accept? Because the saying, we teach people how to treat us, right?
mm,
What am I willing to accept and what am I not? So going back to leadership's first commandment, there was an article I read in Harvard Business Review that said leadership first commandment is know thyself. So your first job is to define, what is my psychological safety and wellness plan for my life? And you can choose a role. You can say in my family relation, you can say at work, right? So get to understand those things. So start with self. Don't worry about anybody just yet. Start with self. What do I need from a communication? From a thought leadership perspective, I call this create your emotional T. And T stands for the science, the work of Dr. Kelvin Chapman. I love his work. He's a clinical psychologist, and he says emotions have three ingredients: what I feel, what I think, and what I say. I turn that into an acronym. So I always ask leaders, what's your emotional T? So start with, what thoughts are driving how safe or how unsafe I feel? Like again, going back to those thoughts. E stands for emotion or energy. What's my default, my emotional default? For me, for the longest while, I didn't know my default was worry, because I always used to just,
yeah, my
even
default
when,
story too.
right? And I never caught it until I was like, but why am I? It's not like there was
And
any.
it brings me to a point of depression, and it's
Yes,
because I'm worried, and I'm like,
yes.
and I'm sometimes like but I've learned to be very open with people very close to me,
Be
and be like,
open, but also be aware
I'm
of even
having a
your
time.
posture, right? Your
Yeah.
posture also, because our emotions follow our body follows our emotion, right? Emotions are bodily sensation. So if you're
Mhm.
like this or you're slumping over, your energy also follows that. So think about the emotional energy. So for me, that's when I had to switch to whether it's love or unity or trust. But what is that as a practice?
Mhm.
Draw it along your body. What does that look like? Because for me, trust, like I noticed that I clench my
I do
right,
that
or
too.
even my heel. My heel when I'm sitting, I'm like, girl, why is your heel like digging into the ground for?
I do. It's mostly my hand thing, and then to the point where my fingers get stiff.
There you go.
So
So
that
notice. So again, so now if we're building your plan for you, so here's what I'll say. If you know it's your thoughts, I want you to choose a statement. Let's use the trust example. Don't trust people until you can't trust them no more. Your trust statement can be, I trust myself, and I trust that no matter the outcome of the situation, I will be able to bounce back and keep going because you
wow.
trust yourself. It's
Mhm.
not about, yes, person A can disappoint me. Absolutely. Person B
And
can,
you
for
know you're
sure.
completely capable, but you just lose that. You just lose
You
that.
know why?
You know,
We're not worried about failing. We're worried about what people will say about us if we fail.
yeah, that
It
too.
goes
That
back to that shame, that shame voice, or what would people say? I'm not good enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. So let's finish our acronym. You're building your psych safety plan. So now you
too.
understand your thoughts, your dominant thoughts, your self-talk tape. What are some of the narrative that's running 80, 90% of the time? E, your emotion, name it, identify it in your body. That's why I love clothes as an expression, just as your makeup. Like you are a whiz at makeup. You can beat a face in seconds. And A stands for your attitude and your action, right? So
Mm.
how I feel, what I think, what I feel in my body, and what I say to myself or my action, my attitude, right? So this is within your control. So craft your tea and then allow that to lead you to, now I understand what I need for myself to thrive. What does that look like when I'm now interacting with others, right?
Mhm.
Something that might be okay with you with interaction if one person might not be okay for another, and this is where we now start setting boundaries. So
Mhm.
now we're in a two-way communication street, and we can now set intentions. We can now be resilient because I know, oh, I feel safe enough to talk to Jael about if she did harm me, or maybe I don't feel safe enough, I might need backup. Then we
Mhm.
can plan accordingly, and try to stay present in your context. I know the brain will try to predict what will happen. If I do X, X might happen. And sometimes we think about the thing going wrong so much,
We
like we're
can't get past
actually in
it.
the future. We can't even pass get
Mhm.
past it. So
Mhm.
always remember to pull yourself back to the present and to leverage the present as an anchor.
Wow. Wow, that was awesome. Carly needs to come back for a part two. We need to get you back on, or we need to do a. We've been speaking about doing something in Dominica for years,
It needs to happen.
and it will happen. I just need. I'm manifesting this right now. I need a big
Yes.
investor, who can bring in the revenue. If you know somebody that knows somebody
Sponsor.
on the
Yes,
line,
please reach out. Sister Talk in
yeah,
Dominica,
let us let us
758.
let us make it happen,
Let's make it
because
happen.
I feel like Dominica as a society, our women are so rich in terms of knowledge, in terms of like they so cool. Like I know women in Dominica who've just like you just leave their job and go and do something, something else, and they're okay to do those things, and to be movers and shakers, and and clearly thriving. Like we look at our government system with so many women in our government system. When I say government, like at the highest of levels, right? So it's not that women are not, and I just find that it needs to be more of a loving relationship and more of a collaborative relationship, and it needs to be more of that and less of fighting and I crab in the bar mentality,
Yes.
and all of those things that really essentially don't create better individuals. It's just
Or society.
societies, and And a little bit love goes a long way. Hannah is saying yes, part two, please. Yes, Hannah has been quiet under the light for the longest while, and she finally came out and she says, "Part two, please." I mean, Karlyn has so much more that she could say. There was so many other things we didn't even get to talking about,
I
but
know.
she's a busy person, and lots coming up. I will tag her website in the chat so you can. I'll also pin it so you can go on there. You can find more information about her and her work and how you can get certified. And she has those lovely journals with the coconuts and stuff. You still have the coconuts and
The success planner. No, we have the Better Habits Journal, which, if you notice, you'll see actually the pitons on
the
here and
pitons on it.
elements. Yeah, because we wanted people to reconnect to
I know
nature.
you had coconuts in the other
Yeah,
in
I
the
had coconuts at one point. We have coconut
yeah.
branches on the new design because these
Okay.
ones are undated. The other
Okay.
ones were dated, which was good.
Yes,
So
yes,
these
yes.
ones
Because
are 90
I
days.
remember that was one of the things. Yes.
Yeah, this one's a 90 days. So for 100 day at a time, you can create a new habit, a new practice. You can reset yourself. You can reintroduce yourself to yourself again. And
Wow.
you can actually dream bigger into your purpose. I'm really excited for our second one to be live in Dominica
Yes, for sure. And we'll
on the
invite
river.
everyone and let everybody come down because I think it
Yeah.
would be amazing. It would be an amazing venture, and people could learn so much from you. You have so much to offer, so much wisdom, and I'm so proud of what you're doing. And sometimes I turn on the TV and I'm like, oh, Carly's on TV, So it's always a proud moment for me knowing, especially knowing where you came from, and even all of somebody asked me, is she single? No, she's not. No, she's not.
Married 10 years.
Yes,
Married 10 years to an
yes,
incredible husband and man. He's Maltese, and we have such a great adventure, and one of the most amazing people in my life. And yeah,
yes,
it's yeah.
yes. Colin, it was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate
you
your
so much.
time. This was long overdue. Yeah, it's maybe she sent for me, She says, so when you have me on your show. Like what am I, chop liver? like hold on. So I'm happy that you could have come on and open up, and that's how I feel like it's a great way to open up the season for this,
Yes.
because you gave us a little bit of everything. We got a little bit of success planning, a little bit of emotional intelligence, a little bit of neuroscience, a little bit of everything. We recharge.
Recharge.
We
Yes.
definitely recharge for the season. I'd like to open up the floor if you have any final words that you'd like to say before we wrap it up.
My final words to it's just be too much, dream big, and remember that purpose is not a conference call. If a vision has been given to you, it is your responsibility to birth it. There's someone out there who's waiting for your blessing. Just do it.
Just do it. Thank you very much, Karlyn. Bye bye. We'll talk soon. Bye bye. Guys, that was wonderful. Hannah says part two. Yes. Um, let's just stand on the credentials. Valda, we're going to have to have a part two. We're gonna have to have a part two. I just want to say thank you very much, all those of you who tuned in, and those of you who will come back on here. I want to say in a big, big way, thank you very much for your support. The season has started. We're ready to keep it rolling. We're ready to keep it going. We're ready to give you more interviews this season. We have another exclusive interview coming up on Wednesday. We have Lyric. Lyric will be joining us, and I'm excited to speak to her during that show. You'll have an opportunity to win a voucher from Fresh Market Health, Beauty, and Cosmetics. That's $150 voucher. You have an opportunity to win that. You could do whatever you want with that $150 upstairs of Fresh Market in Dominica. So I want you to stay tuned to win that $150 on Wednesday, and you'll find out more on Wednesday. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined by the folks from the White Sunset, the Dominica alumni, the Sifokol Alumni Association. So they're going to be joining us here on the show. I'm excited to speak to them again, and we're going to be taking a a stroll down memory lane. It's going to be a stroll down memory lane because we'll have different guests from different years going to be on the show and sharing their experiences at the college, first Tifo Call and then Dominica State College. Thank you very much, guys. Those of you who tuned in, thank you very, very much to my sponsors. I want to say thank you in a big way to the National Cooperative Credit Union of Dominica for being a sponsor for this season. Also want to say thank you very much to Millennium Freights, the agents for Aeropost.com, Logistics International, and UPS, and so much more. Also, Caribe. Listen, if you're drinking, you got to be drinking Caribe, right? You got to Caribe Percil, Caribe Rosé, Caribe Brut, Caribe Mimosas. That's right. And also the Dominican National Lottery, the Blast Gaming, 13 locations across the island. Stay tuned. They're going to be coming up with a very exciting offer for you soon. So make sure you follow them on Facebook and stay tuned for all of the wonderful offers. Thanks again to all those of you tuned in. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks, Valda. Thank you, everyone who enjoyed the show. I truly appreciate you guys. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same time, same place. Don't touch that dial. We're coming back. All right, we're coming back tomorrow. Same time, same place.
Caribe Hard Cider. Moments made extraordinary.
From the cradle to the grave, you don't want to be no slave. You need a loan you want to save. Welcome and visitors today. Hey, with a commitment to quality. What? Therefore you and me was one big family, but now it's a community. True. Making life easy. Yes. Like ABC. Don't matter who you are, you can benefit. When you bring your mortgage
with rates as low as 5% and loans for all your needs.
Open an MRA.
Save for your golden years and take advantage of our savings products.
We will finance your business.
Checking accounts, small business loans, wire transfers, and so much more.
NCCU all the way. Wow!
Your community financial partner.
NCCU.